Keeneland, every moment matters.
And welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News and the co-host of the Down the Stretch radio show on Sirius XM Radio with Dave Johnson.
How y'all doing? Mi nombre es Randolfo Mas of NBC Sports and the Buyers Speed Figure crew.
Hola, ¿qué pasa? Randolph J. Moss. ¿Todo bien? Zoe Cameron here.
Gracias.
Bien, bien. Bill's a bit stumped here. Zoe Cameron, First TV and First Racing. It's a glorious day here in the neighborhood. ¿Qué pasa, Bill?
Yeah, I don't speak Spanish. Can we move on here, guys? And,
that was totally off script, by the way, everyone.
All right.
Can you tell?
Big weekend, obviously, of Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks preps. And let's start down at the Fairgrounds, where I think that was fair to say was the marquee race of the weekend. And it was the Louisiana Derby. And it was won, as you well know, by Emerging Market in a game performance over Pavlovian. Doug O'Neill, boy, he's sneaky. He runs some horses in those races, and they don't look so good on paper. And that horse ran his eyeballs out. But Emerging Market ran back to that big 97 buyer figure he earned in the Tampa Bay maiden race and gutted out the win for Chad Brown. But Zoe, here's the question, and I would direct our listeners and our viewers to read T.D. Thornton's column in Week in Review in Monday's TDN. Can a horse with only 2 lifetime starts win the Kentucky Derby? And that's a legitimate question, according to TDA's research. And this, he went down a Randy Moss-like rabbit hole. He found out that it has only been done once in 151 years of the Kentucky Derby, and only 6 horses have tried it since 1937. A talented horse, and I know the rules have changed over the years and it's gotten a lot easier for these lightly raced horses, but is that a factor you would worry about if you were part of his team?
Who was the one?
I don't know. Okay. Horse that won a long, long time ago.
Okay. He's a good horse. He did regress slightly at a 90 by a speed figure. Tip of the hat to the runner-up Pavlovian, who not only gutted it out in the Sunland Derby under Edward Maldonado, did the same thing, got hooked by Autobahn, went ridiculously fast fractions, 22-3, 46-1, 110-4. We know a track record was set later in the day with Touch Upon a Star, who we'll get to. So the track was fast. But the horse that hooked Pavlovian ran last. So tip of the hat to Pavlovian, the homebred for Redham Racing. Emerging Market by Candy Ride out of a half sister to She Be Wild. She took down the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. Looks like a good prospect moving forward. And why not? I mean, yes, he's had 2 starts. He's going to lack some seasoning, but he certainly doesn't run like a green horse. He got a terrific ride under Pratt, who just seems to put his horses in all the right spots. Pratt only won 2 races, on Saturday when Jose won 5, but don't feel bad for him. The Derby and the Oaks double's not bad at all. It was a good race for Emerging Market. And to answer your question, I would not be worried.
I wasn't even going to talk about that, Bill, but now you got my juices going with this thing, these rules, these Kentucky Derby rules, which pretty much mean absolutely nothing. If Emerging Market is good enough, he'll win, whether he's got 2 starts or 4 starts or 8 starts or 15 starts, right? He's proven that he's professional beyond his experience. So that's not a problem. It's just a factor, in my opinion, of if he's good enough. Look, when I first came around and when you first came around, Bill, people thought that horses coming out of the Santa Anita Derby were at a big disadvantage because they hadn't run in 3 weeks going into the Kentucky Derby. When all the other prep races, the Bluegrass was 9 days, the Arkansas Derby, the Wood, Florida, they were 2 weeks. 3 weeks was a big problem for some people for Santa Anita Derby horses. So look, it's all according to the times and the trends and where we are right now. Now, having said that, I don't think Emerging Market is good enough. He did regress from 97 buyer to a 90. About 5 points of that regression can be explained with a slight weight increase and also a wider trip than Emerging Market got at Tampa, where he was on the rail around both turns until he veered out nearing the top of the stretch. That ground loss does factor into the numbers. So he didn't regress that much. But what I was hoping is, and I loved his maiden win at Tampa, I was hoping to see a move forward in his second lifetime start. And we didn't get that. And not only that, he had to survive a real dogfight with a tough horse in Pavlovian, who, as Zoe pointed out, was just, incredibly stubborn and difficult to pass. Now, Emerging Market was bothered a bit. Pavlovian drifted out and carried him a little wide down the stretch. If Pavlovian had won, if he had gotten his head down on the wire, there probably would have been a foul claim. I don't think that he would have been disqualified, but, really? But that was an issue. Chip Honcho ran poorly because he didn't make the early lead. They ran a lot faster early in the Louisiana Derby than they did in Chip Honcho's Risen Star, which was a surprise to a lot of people, including Doug O'Neill and Edwin Maldonado, the trainer and the jockey of Pavlovian. They told me before the race, or Doug O'Neill told me, that they were both shocked that Pavlovian was on the lead in the Sunland Derby, or right with the leaders. They didn't think he had that kind of speed at all. And I asked Doug, all right, so for the Louisiana Derby, is this like more of a stamina horse or a speed horse? Oh, he's more of a stamina horse. They did not expect him to be on the lead in the Louisiana Derby like he was. And he wasn't asked to be there. He just took himself there and proved to be just incredibly courageous. So the bottom line, Golden Tempo also moved up a little bit. The distance is going to move him up in the Kentucky Derby, but I don't think this race is going to be is going to wind up being a key prep for the Kentucky Derby, in my opinion.
So touching upon a couple other races at Fairgrounds, the Fairgrounds Oaks went to Life of Joy. Gee, Brad Cox has another good 3-year-old filly. There's a story we haven't heard for a while. And you know what I liked about this story is, doesn't this make Zany look all that much better? Who would have thought that the Suncoast Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs could be the key prep race going forward for the Kentucky Oaks? Zany won it, beat Life of Joy comfortably in there, and Life of Joy came back to win what is traditionally one of the very top preps always for the Kentucky Oaks. And not only did she win it, she won it decisively. She won by 3 3/4 lengths. Bella Ballerina is a good horse, but she was not good enough that day to beat Life of Joy. And I think that if she can beat Zany, which might be the story going into the Kentucky Oaks, if anybody can beat her, if she wins the Ashland, I think she definitely belongs in the mix, Randy.
Yeah, look, I think Zany right now is probably the top-rated 3-year-old filly, but I will say this. On one hand, she beat Life is Joy in the Suncoast comfortably, as you said, and she did it despite the fact that Zany was running like a snake through the last eighth of a mile. I mean, she was lugging in. She was she was really out of sorts that last eighth of a mile, probably bored because she was clearly in front. But having said that, Life is Joy took a big step forward from that race into the Fairgrounds Oaks. I'm not sure Zany could have beaten Life of Joy running the way she did in the Suncoast if Life is Joy had run the way she did at the Fairgrounds Oaks. So it's a lot closer between these two horses than I think the Suncoast would make you think. Bella Ballerina, 1 point about her. And it may be pertinent, it may not be pertinent. They're two different horses, but her half-sister Pretty Mischievous that won the Kentucky Oaks, okay, also took the same path. Both Pretty Mischievous and Bella Ballerina came into the Fairgrounds Oaks with enough points to make the Kentucky Oaks. They didn't need to be trained hard to win the Fairgrounds Oaks. They already had their Kentucky Oaks spots set. Pretty Mischievous tailed off. They didn't, really bear down on her training for the Fairgrounds Oaks. And she tailed off and was beaten in that race. And then she bounces back in the Kentucky Oaks. And I think she improves her buyer by like 11 points when they really knuckle down on her training. So the fact that Bella Ballerina regressed a bit and finished second, you don't throw her out of the mix just yet because that was her first lifetime defeat And I think she's right in there with Explora, Bottle of Rouge, Counting Star, She Be Smooth. There's about a half a dozen horses there that I think belong on the short list for the Kentucky Oaks.
And Life is Joy got a good bit of seasoning there. Perfect ride by Pratt under her. I think he only hit her 3 times and she just won going away like a good thing. So she is definitely taking big steps forward. Zany's still got to learn how to run in a straight line. We'll see if she can do that in the Ashland. That will be the telling for sure.
Now, Randy has always had more than one favorite horse, so I am going to tell you, Bookham Dano in fact, sometimes he's had 7 or 8 favorite horses, and we'll get to 2 Phils a little bit later.
How are we getting Bookham Dano into this discussion here? This is interesting.
I got to tell you, Touch Upon a Star is sneaking up on old Dano is my favorite horse. Is this horse a great story or what? The sensational New Orleans Classic winner for the 2nd straight year, the Louisiana bred, who is now won 21 races, 18 of them stakes, won the New Orleans Classic for the 2nd straight year, and set a track record. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. And, I think he's the most underrated horse in racing, but there's a reason for that. The connections have largely kept him in Louisiana bred competition. And I guess, I would ask you, are they being too conservative with the horse? And, I'm going to kind of waver on this. I think maybe a little bit, but at the same time, they're having an awful lot of fun. They're winning races. I know they love to run in their home state, the Delhomme family and Jake Delhomme, the old quarterback. And he told me once, every time we run in these races in Louisiana, which are paid workouts, our whole family comes out and everybody's local. We have a great time. So I'm not going to criticize the way they've managed this horse. They've made $2 million, but I would say, Randy, I'll show this to you first, but maybe shy of Knightsbridge and maybe until Sovereignty comes back, I think he might be the 2nd fastest horse in the country. Oh,
yeah. When he beat Sierra Leone last year in this race, I do the Fairgrounds figures, and the race comes up a 109, and people were like, come on, you give a Louisiana bred a 109 Buyer's speed figure? I didn't give him anything. That's what he ran. And then he comes back and he runs a 108 at Delta. Now he's run 106s back to back. I mean, this horse is just an absolute superstar. But I will say this reminds me a lot of the discussion that we had last fall about Next. Remember that horse?
Yeah.
Winning at 1 3/4 miles, winning at 1.5 miles. Everybody's like, oh, run him in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Why? This horse is dominating in his domain. And he's confident. He's got, everything going his way, and they're having a great time with him, and I don't think he's run since then. I mean, why throw him into the wolves at a distance that, that he might not like and whatever. Touch Upon a Star's had 3 races in his life outside the state of Louisiana. He lost all 3 to horses that he shouldn't be able to warm him up. I don't know why, but what they're doing right now, Zoe, is clearly working, and Jake and Jeff Delhomme are having a great time.
What was the track record he smashed?
It was 148.2 something, whatever, or 147.2 something.
Wow.
So he smashed it by a good margin.
Yeah, and he went honest fractions, 22-3, 46-2, 109-4, 134 and 146.84. So tip of the hat to the connections. If you're wondering where Tim Thornton was, his regular jockey, he usually wears the blue boots, so it's easy to spot Timmy. I reached out to him. I'm like, where the hell were you? Ironically, he said he broke his leg a week or 2 before on a first-time starter for Jake. He's expected to heal up pretty soon, and he'll be on him for his next start. But Arietta did a very good job of subbing for him, just holding on. I think I could have ridden him, to be perfectly honest.
Zoe. Marcelino Pedrosa rode him.
Oh, Marcelino Pedrosa. Sorry. Well, he did a good job too. I could have ridden him. Next time you need a jock, just call me up. He's probably going to be a high weight, so I could probably do that. And I'll just, lean back and enjoy the ride.
Arietta would have won on him too. You're right.
Yeah,
there you go. All right.
Absolutely.
So let's turn our attention to Turfway Park, where the big race was the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Love that purse, $777,000. Won by Full Effort, another Brad Cox trainee. Irad Ortiz took over the mount. No knock on Vincent Cheminade, but anytime you can get Irad Ortiz, that's a good thing. Randy, I'm going to let you kind of take this over because I kind of poo-pooed this race a little bit because I just these horses got to go from synthetic to dirt. Full Effort has never run on the dirt before. But, going back and looking at it, that's why I was saying I was going to bring up Two Phil's, your favorite horse of all time. He came out of this race and ran that bang-up race in the Kentucky Derby that you're still talking about all these years later. Rich Strike came out of this race to win the Kentucky Derby. Seize the Gray didn't win the Kentucky Derby, but he came out of it and won the Preakness. So maybe it was a little bit unfair to the Jeff Ruby. It has produced some very good horses, but I still think as a handicapper, you have to look at the fact that, Brad Cox has chosen to run this horse on synthetic and grass only. He had to have a reason for that. He's made an awful lot of money with the horse, which is what he does because he's such a good trainer. But the big question is, does he transfer his form to the dirt? We'll find out in a little more than 5 weeks in the Kentucky Derby, Randy.
I want to hear what Zoe has to say about this. Okay. Zoe, what's your thought about
I guess we'll have to wait and see. He's never run on the dirt. He trains on it. He's by Liam's Map, who will give you just about any kind of horse you want. He's a half to Power Squeeze, who's dirt. Call on Mischief, dirt. I'm thinking that Brad Cox was just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's get to the Derby. He's got enough points and we'll take it from there. I myself, as a horse lover, have a hard time throwing horses to the wolves in the Kentucky Derby, because we've seen over the years how many horses, honestly, it's ruined. And I've never had a horse that's got into the Derby, so I don't quite know about Derby fever, so to speak, but it ruins a hell of a lot of horses each and every year that really will go on and do other things. Look at Endlessly, who ran in this race. He's never been quite the same. He got his ticket to the Kentucky Derby and then he ran in it, didn't run any good. And it took Michael McCarthy the best part of well over a year to kind of get him to where he even really wanted to run. So that's my biggest thing here. But, it's up to the owners. I understand Derby fever.
Look, this is a huge question. Is this horse going to perform as well on dirt as he did on synthetic in the Jeff Ruby? It's a huge question because his race in the Jeff Ruby was better than Emerging Markets race in the Louisiana Derby. If this horse translates his form to the dirt, he's going to move up at 1.25 miles because that's his running style. Last year, Final Gambit, trained by Brad Cox, comes out of this race and finishes 4th. This is a solidly better horse than Final Gambit. Okay. The reason why Brad Cox has never run him on the dirt before is that when he was training him as a 2-year-old on dirt, he was showing absolutely no speed whatsoever. And Brad knew that if he ran him on the dirt with a horse that lacks this kind of speed, he would probably get his head handed to him. And he thought it was better to start him on the grass instead, where late speed is, of course, more rewarded than it is on dirt. And he ran well on grass. And then he had to decide, okay, what do I do with him now? Do I take him with me to Florida or do I send him to Turfway? And he said, I'm going to do with this horse the same thing. This is my final gambit of 2026. I'm going to run him in the big races leading up to the Jeff Ruby, and we'll see how he does. And all right, now, so at 1.25 miles on dirt, he's bred to handle dirt. You pointed it out, Zoe. Liam's Map, he's a half to Power Squeeze. I think this is a legitimate threat to hit the board in the Kentucky Derby if he handles dirt.
And I'll say one thing, that turf horses do seem to like Churchill Downs for whatever reason. I'm not really quite sure what it is, but turf horses will take to that dirt track quite well.
Look, at the quarter pole, I thought Stark Contrast was gone.
Yeah.
And then in about 3 seconds, all of a sudden he was behind. I mean, Full Effort really, really ran well.
All right, we're going to take a break and we're going to hear from our friends at Keeneland. After that, we'll have the Gainesway Guest of the Week, Tom Rooney, the president and CEO of the NTRA. Stay with us.
Do want to remind you that the TDN, as always, is brought to you by Keeneland. Nominate now for the April Horses of Racing Age sale. It will be held on the conclusion of the final day of racing at Keeneland on Friday, April the 24th, where you can win well, sell well, and reload. Last year, Normandy Coast won the April the 6th Palisades at Keeneland, and just 2 weeks later, he bought a whopping $355,000 at this sale for his owners. Also, entries for the gargantuan Keeneland September sale, the world's highest grossing sale in history, open on April the 1st. God, is it that time already? And the months just seem to fly back. All right, we'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
We do this so your granddaughter can work on a farm someday. So the stands will still be packed in 50 years. That's why we come to work every day, obsess over every single detail. Because the story of racing is written one moment at a time. And the future of our industry deserves nothing less. Keeneland, every moment matters.
The fastest horse of the week brought to you by the Fast Sires at WinStar Farm. We promised you last week we would give him his due this week, and here we go. Two Phils, one of my favorites. We just talked about Full Efforts winning the Jeff Ruby Stakes this past weekend. Just 3 years ago, Two Phils looked awfully good winning the Jeff Ruby, won it by 5 1/4 lengths, just 0.31 seconds off the track record. And just like his sire Hardspun, Two Phils had been a 2-time stakes winner as a 2-year-old prior to winning the Jeff Ruby, and just like Hardspun, Two Phils went on after the Jeff Ruby to finish second in the Kentucky Derby. That would be behind Mage in 2023. And we get to meet the first yearlings by Two Phils this summer. Two Phils stands at WinStar Farm for a fee of just $7,500. Fastest horse of the week we have already discussed in some detail. What a performance it was, again, by Touch Upon a Star in the New Orleans Classic. Now back-to-back Buyers speed figures of 106. And for, I don't know, the 17th time, Touch Upon a Star is our fastest horse of the week.
Welcome in now the Gainesway Guest of the Week, and it is the president and CEO of the National Thoroughbred Racing Association, a person that's familiar to everyone in racing, Tom Rooney. Always good to have Tom on, but a lot going on in Washington and D.C. to talk about, and that's a reason why we wanted to have him on at this particular time. Tom, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, there's a couple things that, well, actually one major thing that horse players and gamblers in general, be they poker players or sports wagerers or whatever, are up in arms. And granted, being horse fans and horse players ourselves, we're kind of biased, but they should be up in arms because a part of the One Big Beautiful Bill was a provision where horse players could no longer deduct 100% of their losses against their earnings. So, for instance, if you made $100,000 gambling and you lost $100,000, you could only deduct 90% of that. So you'd essentially be paying tax on money that you did not earn. Now, there is 2 bills that have been introduced to try to take this provision away and to make it more fair. One is called the Fair Bet Act. It was sponsored by Nevada Democratic Congresswoman Adina Tuttis. And then there's also the Wager Act, sponsored by Andy Barr, a Kentucky Republican. Can you bring us up to speed on what's going on in the Washington about both these bills? And at the end of the day, do you think there's reason for optimism that what, again, we think is a very unfair tax on horse players is going to be done away with?
Well, as you know, what's going on in Washington right now is a lot of things that don't have anything to do with the regular machinations of doing business. That's not because of what's happening in Iran and you know, the TSA issue, obviously with ICE at the airports. You know, now we're solely focused on those things before we get ready to leave on an election year for recess, which usually happens in August. And in election years, there's a lot of times where we don't come back until almost election time. And there is, hope in a lame duck, especially if the Republicans lose the House, to try to sort of clean up a lot of the things that they wanted to get done while they were in the majority. The Wager Act and the Fair Bet Act have been a priority for our office. We have gone up and down the halls of Congress to explain to a lot of members that, quite frankly, and I don't think it's unfair to them, but did not know what this issue was, did not know that it was in the big, beautiful bill, or I should say that it wasn't in the big, beautiful bill. And this is a great example, by the way, of sometimes there is an effort to find dollars, to find money somewhere in an effort to show that this bill is being paid for in some way. And one of the avenues that, quite frankly, it was most likely a staffer on one of the committees that saw this as a means to get money for the big, beautiful bill. And what better way to do it than people that are engaged in a gambling activity? So the short-sightedness of this is that you probably are looking at about $1 billion in pay for. But when you talk about the people that are participating at the level that these people are, that would trigger this kind of a tax, as you guys know, what's going to end up happening is that they're going to probably end up taking their business elsewhere or greatly reducing their activity. So the unintended consequence of this effort to gain revenue by the government is that they're probably going to end up losing even more, because the people that bet at that level aren't going to, or they're going to go somewhere else. So you're really going to lose more than what you think you're gaining.
So, Tom, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, there had been a little optimism that perhaps this could get done quickly in Washington, and then it could be applied retroactively to 2025. Yeah. For us, it's easy to understand how unfair this is. With everything else going on in Washington, how difficult is it to break through and convince people who don't know anything about horse racing, what this is all about?
It's difficult in the sense that, on one hand, it's such a sort of narrowly focused issue for us that is very important, but for the rest of the United States might be something that they would consider an afterthought, especially with everything else going on. Now, when you have big issues that affect a lot of people, then you motivate the base to call your congressman, call your senator, those type of things. However, on an issue like this, similar to what we tried to do and what we accomplished with HISA, and do you remember we had HISA, there was a court ruling that said that there was this little problem with HISA. So we went back a Congress later and got it fixed, which was a minor miracle, to appease that court. And then once we did that, the court came back and said, okay, you're good now. So, so that was very good for HISA. But with regard to this, sometimes when you're kind of below the radar like this, if there is a bill, a must-pass bill, that means something that's definitely getting to the president's desk, and we can attach either the Fair Bet Act or the Wager Act onto it, whether it be a continuing resolution, whether it be a debt limit vote, or whether it be some kind of a bigger bill where people are kind of, putting different ornaments on the Christmas tree. They always like to avoid those, but it does happen. I seriously doubt you're going to get on anything with this TSA stuff, but there will be legislation by the end of the year that will have to get to the president's desk. And if there are certain things that are fixes in the tax bill or the big, beautiful bill that people want to get done before the Republicans, potentially lose the House, that would be a time where you could work your relationships on the committees, get it included, Hope it gets to the president's desk, and lo and behold, just like the HISA fix that we had, we get it in there. Now, this is where our relationships matter, our friendships, especially in the Ways and Means Committee, where this would originate as a fix with other tax legislation. As you guys know, the Ways and Means Committee initiates all tax legislation. This being a tax issue, would go through there. We have a very close relationship there with the chairman, Jason Smith, and he has tasked a member from Ohio named Max Miller. If there's any Ohio listeners out there who have Max Miller as their congressman, please tell them it's important that he be contacted, that is trying to sort of be our champion here. And so we've been working with both of those offices that if there is any kind of fixes on the tax bill that get attached to something else, that go to the president's desk, that we would like to be included. And the good news is that Jason has no issue with this. In the Senate, there doesn't seem to be an issue with Chairman Crapo in finance. So it's nice when those guys don't have an issue. There's a couple other people for different reasons oppose this, but I don't know that it's enough to kill our efforts.
Well, let's hope something gets done. I have a good friend of mine who bets like 10 million a year. And he simply said, if this doesn't go through, or it does go through in a bad way for the gamblers, he's going to have to quit. It's like, I can't afford to be doing that. And we need that kind of revenue from the gamblers. What about the SAFE Act, Tom? Are we pushing that?
Yeah, the SAFE Act is, been entered or sponsored. We used to say dropped because there's literally a wooden box in the front of the dais of the speaker's podium there where you drop a piece of paper in that box, and that's called dropping a bill. Congressman Buchanan has been a co-sponsor of the SAFE Act before I got to Congress in 2008, and every year he introduces that along with others. And, it always gets a lot of co-sponsors. As I've said, I think before, the problem with the SAFE Act and the horse slaughter issue, what you may not be aware of, and I certainly was not aware of when I first got elected to Congress, that this is a hugely hot button issue, especially when it comes to Western Republicans who, in a way, look at horses as livestock in the way that they would look at, cattle or pork. For them to agree that there's a difference for equines, they feel like it's a slippery slope to beef cattle. And so they have been hard and fast, opposed to the SAFE Act because they don't want the next shoe to drop be beef. And so when I first got elected, I represented parts of Wellington, Florida, which, as you know, is a huge equine population. And a lot of the people that were involved in the activity in Wellington asked me to support the SAFE Act, to which I said, sure, I don't like the idea of slaughtering horses or having them shipped to Canada or Mexico for that purpose. And so I cannot tell you the kind of holy hell that I got in the cloakroom from members from the western part of our country about Rooney, what are you doing?
Wow.
Like, this is really, really a bad decision, and just a lot of emotional pressure. And I mean, these members of Congress are representing their constituents too. So I understand that. But what we've been able to do on the Appropriations Committee, the Agriculture Appropriations Committee, is there's still rendering plants out west for horses, just the same as there are for cows and everything else. But what we do is we don't fund the inspections of horse slaughter, so they can't do it here. So that's why the SAFE Act specifically talks about shipping to Mexico and Canada for the same purpose. That's basically how we avoid doing it in the United States. And I think, and rightly so. I mean, if you follow anything across the pond, one of the things that they go after in like Ireland and England is they get cameras in those rendering plants and they show videos. And it's really hard. I have friends that work in the horse racing business in Ireland, and it's really hard for them to try to explain that away to people that are seeing it for the first time. The fact that we don't have it here really does help. But that all being said, there is rumors, to answer your question, that some iteration of the SAFE Act might be attached to this year's Farm Bill. And this Farm Bill is a much scaled back Farm Bill than we had before. And it might be something that is that gets bipartisan support. At the same time, it might also be something that kills the whole Farm Bill, I've been told, because of the emotion of those members from the West. So it's kind of like a slippery slope issue when it comes to, can we get it on the Farm Bill? If yes, are those Western Republicans willing to take down the entire Farm Bill because of horse slaughter? And the answer is yes, they will. It's that emotional of an issue for them. So that's where we are. The SAFE Act, not to be confused with the SAVE Act, which you've been hearing on TV a lot, which has to do with voter identification. So,
well, actually, Tom, I mean, that's discouraging to hear you say that. But I know that, you and others are working hard on this. I want to go back before we move on to other topics, back to the one big beautiful bill thing, because this makes my blood boil as it should, not only as a horse player, but it's a cliche, but this is so un-American to tax people when they're not making money, when to actually tax somebody who, theoretically, if you do the math, could actually be losing money, right, gambling, and still be taxed on this. The people that are standing in the way, the people that say this is a good idea, what on earth is their argument for? I know you explained that it was important to put some extra money into the bill and everything, but from the people who say, Tom, we're not for this, the Fair Bet Act or the Wager Act. I can't imagine how they justify this. What do they tell you?
There's members of Congress and the Senate that believe that gambling is a sin, and they are their whole sort of mantra about politics is piety, and that this is a tax essentially on sin, and so it's an easy one. And there's staffers that work for these senators, and it's mostly senators. There's a couple of them that, will die on this hill if they have to. And they believe that they're doing it for the right reasons. And the people that are getting hurt they're not really victims that, people are going to shed too many tears over. So, but what these people are involved in is legal. It's traditional in this country for hundreds of years when it comes to betting on horses, and over 100 years. And, to take the sort of holy high ground for this group of people is just unfortunate for us. Luckily, it's only a couple people, and it doesn't take you too long to Google who they are. And by the way, I don't condemn their thinking from the standpoint that I think that they really believe that. But, for our industry and what we have to work towards, it was just a curveball that was basically snuck into the final iteration of the big, beautiful bill after we worked so hard to get the 100% permanent depreciation and got the Senate to include that. And then to see what they sent over to the House, only there was it a take it or leave it bill. They could not amend it. A lot of people, were a little bit harsh on some of our champions in the House. Well, they shouldn't have voted for this if they knew that this tax issue involved with the wagering. And for all that we got from the permanent depreciation for the sales, which was huge, some people thought that the take it or leave it bill that got back to the House should have been voted against. That's a cost benefit to weigh. Do I throw out all the positives we're getting from what we're seeing at the sales for the people that are affected that wager on these horses? from a financial level, what we're getting at the sales is much, much greater. But coming from a family that owned racetracks, I am fully aware, and I've heard the stories from New York, etc., of the people that we'd consider whales that really account for a lot of our handle. And, when one of those guys, as you're saying, Zoe, decides to retire or sometimes passes away, I mean, it really, really does hurt that racetrack in a big way. So, that includes jobs, that includes everything. So I feel, to answer your question, I feel good about the people that are in charge of this issue that would attach it to a must-pass bill that would get to the president, that they don't have a problem with it. There might be a senator or two that might object, but they're not going to object to the bigger bill that it's attached to. So if you're asking, why don't we do the Wager Act or the Fair Bet Act as a standalone bill that would be passed a committee, the House, the Senate, and get to the president, it will never get to the president. Now, if it's attached to some continuing resolution or something bigger that those couple senators that think that that's sort of like against their moral code, nobody's going to notice if they vote for it because it funds a universal ID for voters or something like that, So I'm not worried about it from the grounds of it's not going to get to the president's desk. If it's attached to a bigger bill, we just got to make sure that when something like that does go, that we're included.
I have one more quick question about that. First of all, it wouldn't surprise me at all that someone who's morally opposed to gambling might feel like they're doing whales a favor by driving them out of the sport.
They might.
But in so many different regions, thoroughbred racing is in direct competition with casinos. But this would seem to me to be an area of mutual benefit, where the casinos would be joining hands with the horse racing industry to try to get this beaten. Is that what's happening?
Absolutely. I've gotten to become very close with people on the American Gaming Association. I mean, you're right. A lot of times we're not always on the same page with things like, the Indian casinos in California and Florida. They're on their board, whereas a lot of times, those entities are really trying to get rid of all other kinds of gambling except for the Indian casinos. So, but in this regard, we are all on the same page. We actually are on a weekly phone call with the American Gaming Association and their lobbyists to talk about who's going to see who, what progress have we made with this senator or that senator. And it is really good to have that kind of a bedfellow when you're talking about. I'll give you a perfect example. One of the biggest proponents of, the bringing this back to 100% is Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is from Texas. He is one of those guys that you would think might be in that ultra pious lane. Ted Cruz supports the casino industry by and large because the people that are in charge of those casinos are huge donors of his. So one of our biggest allies is Ted Cruz for that reason. And we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for the people that make up the American Gaming Association. So it is really nice to have sort of that muscle behind you when it comes to those big casino operators. And, it's not just them. There's a few others that we're all on the same page. So, having not just the stories of the people that are going to the racetrack that are thinking about retiring or quitting, it's also World Series of Poker, famous, people that people have come to know and follow on television. So there's faces with names and real stories out there. And so again, I feel good with the people that are in charge that don't oppose us. We just got to be included. And I mean, it's going to take everything that we have at the NTRA, at the American Gaming Association to work our relationships. This whole job that I have, guys, you'll see when some of my friends start to retire, that's when I'm going to leave, because then I'll lose all my juice. When these guys that are chairmen leave and I can't text them anymore being like, hey, don't forget about, once it becomes some new guy that I've never met before, then all I become is one of those guys that's like begging for 15 minutes of your time. And I'm not doing that. So, but right now we're in a good place. So hopefully those relationships matter.
Tom, I want to ask you one more quick question before we let you go. And let's give you a chance to talk about the NHC. And
Yes.
My goodness, it's been such a success, but you were there. What was it like? And what was the feeling in the room when it comes down to the last race and a fellow by the name of Dylan Donnelly wins by 84 cents? That's a great story. And wow, that must have been electric.
It was not just that, it was very emotional. I mean, I don't mean to disclose a secret, but we were all rooting for that kid. I mean, the other people that were at the final 10 table were all good people. There were some guys that were really funny. There were some guys that were like really serious, but Dylan has been close a lot in years past. And he even sort of called his shot this year in an interview. I don't know if it was with you all or somebody else, but he said, I'm going to win this one day and I'm going to win it soon. And I don't know if he knew it was going to be like a week later, but he has a very interesting way of picking horses. And he is just the story that he has where, he unfortunately went back to the back of his trailer on the way back from a hunting trip with his buddy to lay down, and the axle broke and caused an accident that left him paralyzed. His response was, well, I'm glad it wasn't the week before when my brother was in the trailer, or a week after when my grandparents were going to use it. I mean, that just shows you what type of a guy he is. And I was secretly rooting for, waiting for, because the guy that was ahead of him did have the second horse. And so it was going to be like a math. Did he have enough? And I think he picked a 10-1 shot. So, I mean, he really played it well and just had a huge reaction by the entire room. I mean, you got 800 people in there all trying to beat each other. And when it came down to waiting for the final numbers to come up, everybody was standing around Dylan, just looking up at the board. And when it came out that he won by 84 cents, the place just erupted like I've never seen it before. Usually people are happy for the guy, but this was genuine joy. And for him to get over $800,000, I mean, for him, I think that it's really going to mean something big. And, I don't mean to, plug too many people, but Dave Portnoy was there from Barstool and got on his show after and just said he's the greatest handicapper he's ever watched. I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan doesn't get some kind of gig on Barstool or something, because it was that profound. And I won't waste your time with what he does to wager or to handicap, but it's pretty cool. I'm going to start doing it. But it's just it was a great event, and we're going to have some big news with regard to next year's event here shortly.
Very good. Well, we'll look forward to that. Well, Tom, thank you for your efforts on behalf of the horse racing industry. Let's sure hope you can get either the Fair Bet Act or the Wager Act across the finish line, because my goodness, horse racing can't afford this. And as we have said, it's extremely unfair. You've been a great guest, the great Gainesway guest of the week. We thank you so much for your time, and keep plugging away for the horse racing industry in our nation's capital.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Tom.
Our guest of the week, Tom Rooney, brought to you by Gainesway, the home of Seize the Gray, the highest earning son of Hall of Famer Arrowgate. And from his final crop at stud, Seize the Gray won the Preakness in 2024. But not just that. During his career, he beat the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont winners from that year, Mystic Dan and Dornoch. Seize the Gray in all earned $2.4 million. And his first foals right now are arriving across the bluegrass. Seize the Gray stands for a fee of $25,000 at Gainesway.
Seize the Gray wins convincingly.
Seize the Gray! He's going to seize the day in the Pennsylvania Derby.
Seize the Gray is still there. Seize the Gray wins the Preakness.
It's now time for this week's edition of First Things First, and I throw it out to my good pal, Michelle Yu.
I'm joined right now by Charlie, who's representing Little Red Feather today, right? You were so excited. This is Billy Koch's nephew. And are you a big Gold Phoenix fan?
Yeah.
Did you think he was going to win today?
Yes, I knew it from the start.
Even though he's 0 for 5 at the mile and a half, no doubts.
Yeah, I came here from the start. I was not going to leave until he ran.
I love it. And did you complete the Rubik's Cube in less time than it took him to finish this race?
No, but yes. Yeah. I did it in less than a minute.
Oh my goodness, that is pretty amazing. How cool is it to have a horse like Gold Phoenix in the barn?
It's cool because he's just so good and he always wins.
Yeah, he does. He is a win machine. He's a handicap. Oh, he is a handicapper too. That's right. Who's your Derby pick for the year already?
The Puma.
The Puma. He's about to run, right? I think we had to work for him on First TV today.
Yeah.
Yeah?
He's going to win.
All right. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I'm going to beg Billy to come over just real quick. What does Gold Phoenix mean to the Little Red Feather team?
You wish they were all like him. Just game, and Walker's probably watching and makes fun of me because I always get choked up, but we just had a good day, and it's great for the partners to have a horse like this, and he's 8 and he keeps going, and it's just one of those things that you can't put a word to it. He just gives it his all every time. That last race was so disappointing because he was training so well, and I think, looking back now, maybe it was just the trip that wide all the way, but Hector Barrios, just kudos to him. What a great ride. And obviously with Phil and his team did a great job bringing him back. And we're going to keep going.
Bring Charlie to more races.
Yeah, for the first and the last. That's we call that the Charlie Daily Double.
We got the Charlie bookends right here. Congratulations, Billy, Little Red Feather, Charlie, and our good buddy GFP.
Thanks so much for that, Michelle. Do want to remind you that racing does continue at Santa Anita this coming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Free Fridays, free parking. It is all free. If you come and see me, I'll give you a free beer as well. Another reminder, we do have racing on Thursday, April the 2nd, and Thursday, April the 30th. Put that in your calendar.
Well, let's talk about some industry news and some things that happen off the track. And Pat Valenzuela, he's been trying for a while. Even at his age, he's 63 years old. I think Mike Smith is old. He's 4 years younger than Pat Valenzuela. P-Val hasn't ridden in almost 10 years, since 2016. But he kept plugging away, and he got the Arizona Racing Commission to give him a license. And he is going to resume his career at that age at Turf Paradise. I don't believe he has any entries in the next couple of days, but it shouldn't be long. And I'm sure that a lot of people will say two things. What the heck is he thinking? And number two, should he be allowed back? I mean, obviously, we all know about the many transgressions in his career. But if he wants to ride, I don't have any problem with that. I don't know how successful he'll be at this age. But the one thing I've always thought about Pat, in my opinion, is yes, he's had a lot of problems and he's done a lot of bad things. But never once has he ever done anything on the racetrack he's never been any evidence that he's ridden impaired. He's never been accused of race fixing, anything like that. All he's ever done on the racetrack is try 100%. And so I don't see any reason to blackball him. Again, at age 63, having not ridden in 10 years, he had a torn ACL. I believe he had his knee replacement. He's an old man. And even at Turf Paradise, which is not exactly, the Saratoga riding colony, I don't know how well he's going to do, but I'm fine with him coming back, Zoe, and I wish him luck.
Godspeed. Pretty much all I can say. Good luck, P-Val. He's trying to use this as a stepping stone to get back to California racing. He even intimated, maybe someone could throw him a Derby mount. Good luck is all I can say. We'll see how he does. I'm wishing him all the best.
He obviously needs the money. I mean, he's 63 years old. There's no other reason why he would do this. And while, we can say maybe, maybe not, but if we say, all right, there's no proof he ever actually rode while he was, directly under the influence, it had to affect his reflexes. It had to affect a lot of things with his riding. To me, this is a Jockeys Guild question. those are the guys that have the most skin in the game, obviously, that have the most at stake riding against P-Val. If the Jockeys Guild is okay with P-Val making a comeback, and despite all of his past issues, even at age 63, then I'm fine with it. But I think should be their call.
Perry Utes is 72.
There you go. P-Val's a veritable youngster compared to Perry Utes. So I thought it was interesting to hear Bob Baffert say that he always brings horses in for Derby week, at least since the ban has been lifted. But he says this year he's going to keep horses in Kentucky and run through the remainder of the meet. And I can't say this comes as a big surprise because, again, this is the issue that we're dealing with. And I say this with respect and feeling badly for California racing, that they cannot compete with the purses primarily in Kentucky and elsewhere. And I don't think you can blame trainers when, maidens are running for whatever it is, 125,000 out there. And Bob also did say that he needs to split up some of his horses because he has so many in the same divisions. That'll give him a chance to run horses, not have 4 horses in every race like sometimes happens with him. But, again, it's I root for California racing. I really do. Nobody wants to see it suffer and struggle, but this is another sign of tough times for California. Nobody's been more loyal to California and for a long time, Manny, than Bob Baffert. And even he now is dipping his toe into the water in Kentucky and is going to have his hand out with all those riches coming from those historical horse racing machines.
I mean, the money obviously has something to do with it. I mean, he hasn't expressly said that. But I do believe him when he says that a lot of it is just that he's got to run his horses. I mean, the horse population is not in Southern California what they want it to be. And, the races that Bob needs to fill to run as often as he wants to run probably aren't filling as regularly as he would like. So he's got to, in his words, he's got to split his horses up and send some to California. It's unfortunate for California.
And listen, it's not the first time he's had a string in Kentucky. People are acting like Bob is pulling up sticks and taking his whole barn to Kentucky. He's leaving plenty of horses here. He's got a lot of maidens. Bob's running maidens that are bred up, down, and sideways to run on the dirt in turf races because he's running 2 in the 2 maiden races that go, and then he's got like 6 others waiting in the wings. So he's running them on the grass. It's just a fact of he's got so many horses with all the same conditions. He's got a barn full of maidens over at Los Alamitos. You can only run so many in each maiden race. So he's going to take some to Kentucky, but it's not the first time he's done it. He's not pulling sticks and leaving Southern California. He's going to have a big string here. I don't know who's going to go out there. I'm going to assume that Jimmy's going to go at least for a short period of time. But Bob's a kind of a micromanager too. He does much better with horses under his shed row, under his charge. So we'll see exactly what happens. But yeah, he's not by any means just moving everything completely out of Southern California.
Well, we're going to take another break. We're going to hear from the PHBA and the KTOB. And we come back, Zoe Cadman, Randy Moss, and I will take a look at the big races this weekend coming up, topped by the Florida Derby. Stay with us.
TDN Writers Room also brought to you by the PHBA, the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. An update on 5 stallions who stood their first seasons in Pennsylvania in 2025 and whose first foals are now hitting the ground. We're talking about Baron, winner of 12 of 35 starts, including 7 stakes. He stands at Win Oaks Farm. There's the Godolphin bred Enticed, who won the Gotham and the Kentucky Jockey Club. Enticed stands at Mountain Springs Farm. There's New York Traffic. Remember him? He won $1 million in his career. He also stands at Mountain Springs. Tyson, a Sovereign Award winner as Canada's champion older male. Tyson hails from the family of Belmont winner Arcangelo. He stands at Stone Jug Ranch. And last but not least, because his name starts with the letter Z, Zozos, winner of the Grade 3 ACAC Stakes at Churchill Downs. If you'd like more information about the PA Bred program, you can visit pabred.com or just call Brian Sanfratello, 610-444-1050.
The Pennsylvania breeding program is the best program in the country. The stallion awards, the owner bonuses, also the restricted races and the stakes races for Pennsylvania breds. Last year, 321 Pennsylvania breeders earned breeders awards. 22 Pennsylvania breeders earned over $100,000. We have the best program in the country. Take advantage of the fantastic program that we have.
Learn more at pabred.com.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
TDN Writers Room also brought to you by Kentucky Breds, who swept this past weekend's Kentucky Derby and Triple Crown prep races when Emerging Market won the Louisiana Derby. He's now number 2 on the road to the Derby leaderboard with 100 points for Klarovich Stables and his breeder Stone Riggs Farm. Life of Joy won the Fairgrounds Oaks, as we've told you. She now tops the Oaks leaderboard at 122 points. Also a Kentucky bred, the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Kentucky bred, full effort, who now tops the Derby leaderboard ahead of Emerging Market with 110 points for his owners, St. Elias Stables, Vinnie Viola, and Starlight Racing, and his breeder, Athens Woods. And the Bourbonnette Oaks went to Kentucky bred Lorelei Lee. Coming up this weekend, Chief Wallaby and Commandment headline the Florida Derby. Kentucky bred, and Kentucky bred Silent Tactic and Renegade are among the favorites at Oaklawn in the Arkansas Derby.
Well, one of the very best preps of the season, as it always is the Florida Derby, the Curlin Florida Derby. And I think they made the right morning line favorite in here. Chief Wallaby at 2-1, even though he got beat by Commandment last time out. And I'm going to be one of many to jump on his bandwagon. It has a lot to do with the fact that Bill Mott is his trainer, been bringing him along slowly. He ran great in the Fountain of Youth and should improve enough to run a better race. Does that mean he's going to be good enough to beat Commandment? And Nearly, who is 3-1, and also the Puma is another major contender in the race. But I think logically he's the one to beat. And it's also interesting that the future wager bettors agree with that as well, because in the last future wager, I believe he was tied for the top spot with Paladin. So the bettors have already made their voices heard that Chief Wallaby is a horse to be reckoned with. I don't know if the Florida Derby winner is going to be the Kentucky Derby favorite, because we still have to see what happens in the Arkansas Derby, which we'll talk about in a minute. And of course, the Bluegrasses and San Diego Derby will be very important as well. But whoever wins this race is certainly going to be a main contender. Mr. Moss in the Kentucky Derby.
Short stretch, Gulfstream Park, Nearly.
Okay.
Look, I loved his race in the Fountain and the Holy Bull. 45 and change, almost 46, 45.96 for the half mile, fighting with Cannoneer for the lead. And then he basically re-breaks and wins by 5 3/4, was pulling away. I'll give Nearly an edge over Chief Wallaby in what should be a fantastic race.
I'm going to go straight exacta, Chief Wallaby over Nearly.
We will find out more about the Kentucky Oaks field when they were on the Gulfstream Park Oaks on the Florida Derby undercard. The favorite will be She Be Smooth, trained by Todd Pletcher. Flavien Pratt, who he seems like he's riding about 8 Oaks contenders and 9 Derby contenders at this point. His agent and the trainers are going to have a lot of figuring out to do between now and Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby Day, but he's aboard She Be Smooth. I am actually going to try to beat her with Prom Queen, trained by Brad Cox. I know this horse has done nothing but break her maiden, but she was very impressive last time out, ran off the screen. And I also like the fact that she's also won around 2 turns where She Be Smooth has not. But I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if She Be Smooth wins this. Not a horse that I'm going to throw out, but I'll take a little flyer on Prom Queen in there.
I mean, how could I bet against Nasty Z? For Savvy Joseph in here. I mean, I've got to take a little bit of a swing there.
Off a $35,000 maiden claimer?
How would they put Nasty Z in for a tag first time out? That's just terrible. I'm just kidding. I like She Be Smooth in here with Pratt, but I'm going to be rooting for Nasty Z. Why wouldn't I?
All right. I'll side with Bill. Prom Queen over She Be Smooth. I had a little concern pedigree-wise about distance, 2 turns for She Be Smooth, even though she looked, amazing winning around a 1-turn mile. But she did get a rail trip that day. I don't know if she's going to be that fortunate again. I'll take Prom Queen.
The Arkansas Derby with a hefty purse of $1.5 million on Saturday at Oaklawn Park. I'll go with the very obvious Renegade in here for Todd Pletcher. Irod Ortiz, by the way, took off commandment in the Florida Derby to ride for Todd here. I think that is important. Coming off a Sam Davis win, the Puma came out of the Sam Davis, came back to win the Tampa Bay Derby. Don't really see, this is not a very, thinking outside the box pick. It just looks like a logical horse. But I want to get, Zoe, your opinion on who you like.
This is a very good betting race because I don't find a standout. I have a sneaky feeling that Blackout Time might be sitting on a big one. Don't ask me why. It's just something Kenny McPeak can do. Throw one, straight out of the cannon at you. So I'm wondering how good he is going to run. I understand with the favoritism in there on Renegade, but it's not a 1-horse race as far as I'm concerned.
All right. When Irad took off commandment to ride Renegade, he made my decision for me there. I think Renegade's the horse to beat. And Silent Tactic would be, to me, about the only horse in there that I could confidently think would be able to run him down.
On Friday at Oaklawn, they'll run the Fantasy Stakes, $1 million for fillies pointing for the Kentucky Oaks. Explorer from the Bob Baffert barn will be the big favorite of Flavien Prat aboard. But I'm once again going to try to get the minor upset with Sticker Shock from Brad Cox. Obviously, I'm on the Brad Cox bandwagon. Looked pretty good and got a nice 87 buyer last time out, winning an allowance race at Oaklawn. And really, sometimes you look at the figures and is Explorer really that much faster than everybody else? Really, no, she's not. She's not necessarily faster than Counting Stars. She's not necessarily faster than Sticker Shock. So maybe she'll be a little bit over bet. Again, I have all the respect in the world for Explorer and, of course, the team of Baffert and Flavien Prat. Not going to be the least bit surprised if she wins, but I think she might be an okay bet against, and I'll go with Sticker Shock.
Look,
Explorer knows how to win. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I want to hear you.
I've just said that she knows how to win races. She's never been out of the top 2. She gets well drawn on the outside with Pratt. There's a guy we need to have on one time, his agent, Brad Pegram, just to see how he juggles it. Great guy. He's out here in Southern California just a couple of days ago. He bebops all over the place. He'd be a great guy to have on.
Well, Explorer is a deserving favorite, but if Counting Stars is any kind of a decent price as second choice, she is the real deal. Look, I mean, when she won a race of 6 furlong stakes at Oaklawn, I think it was called the Astral Spa. She looked really good. And then she came back. She won a race called the Year's End. And I was like, this horse is a legitimate Kentucky Oaks contender. And then they ran her back in the Martha Washington, and she got beat literally by a pole with no excuse. Mark Cassidy, trainer, couldn't find anything wrong. Had no idea why she ran that terribly. All he knew is that she came back and trained really well. So he didn't know what to think when he put her into the Honeybee. And she was right back to where she was before. I would feel a lot better about Counting Stars if I knew what happened to her 2 races back. But if she runs her last race back again, she was gaining on Explorer. It was a heck of a race for Counting Stars, and she's a legitimate Kentucky Oaks contender off her best effort.
So once again, a huge weekend of preps for both the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks. And we'll be talking about all that again on our show next week.
The TDN Writers Room is also brought to you by First TV. The Puma, who won the Tampa Bay Derby in his last start on March the 7th, is this week's First TV work of the week. Our cameras caught the Puma working 5 furlongs at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, 101 and 4, in preparation for Saturday's Florida Derby, where he'll take on Chief Wallaby along with Commandment and several others. We'll be right back after this message from First TV.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart. With First TV. All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
TDN Writers Room also brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. This Friday at Oaklawn, West Point will be cheering on Counting Stars in the $1 million Fantasy Stakes, looking to punch her ticket to the Churchill Downs for the Kentucky Oaks. She's made herself at home at Oaklawn. She won 2 stakes races and a very good second behind Explora in the Grade 3 Honeybee, which we mentioned earlier. Counting Stars is a star alumni of the OBS spring sale of 2-year-olds in training, where she was bought last spring for $150,000. West Point will have another representative from that sale back in action Saturday when Carson's Run returns in the Appleton Stakes at Gulfstream. David Ingordo secured Carson's Run for $170,000 for West Point at OBS April in 2023. Carson's Run scored Grade 1 wins as a 2-year-old and as a 3-year-old, and now he's back as a 5-year-old for trainer Miguel Clement.
Well, that's a wrap. I want to thank our Gainesway guest of the week, Tom Rooney. Shed a lot of light, I thought, on what's going on in Washington with this very unfair tax on gamblers. And it's good to have Mr. Rooney in the corner of horse players and gamblers of all species. I want to thank my partners, Randy Moss and Zoe Cabin. I also want to thank the people that work behind the scenes and do such a fabulous job at making this end product look as good as it does. And that's the team of Sue Finley, Katie Petroniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Aaliyah LaRocca. We'll be back next week. Plenty to talk about because we got some huge races coming up next week as well, including the Bluegrass, the Santa Anita Derby, and the Wood Memorial. We'll see you next week.